Hey, gang, welcome to the Gill Athletics Connections podcast. So happy you're here. Our goal with this podcast is simply to share with you the stories and backgrounds of the just tremendously awesome people of track and field. I'm humbled to be your host, Mike Cunningham. It's my honor and my privilege to bring you these great men and women from around the world. This week, I've got, I'm just going to give you his nickname. I don't want to disrespect his last name. We'll learn early in the podcast how to pronounce it, but I've got Iggy Oggy, the assistant track and field coach at Stanford University in beautiful, beautiful California. We just really get into it and chop up about his life as a track and field coach collegiately. And then we take a turn into how he grew up in his adolescence and the impact that his high school, junior high, and high school track and field coach had on his life. You're really going to enjoy it. Such an honor to be able to share his story and what his high school coach, track and field coaches meant to him and his development through the world of college track and field. So, hey, without further ado, help me welcome the wise, the wonderful Iggy Oggy. Hello, Iggy.
How are we?
Oh, man. Dealing with the new normal.
Absolutely.
Iggy, thank you so much for joining us today on the Gill Athletics Connections podcast. This is going to be a lot of fun. Iggy, and I don't even want to pretend to be able to pronounce your last name, Iggy. Set us straight.
All right. So the traditional way is Ignaczak.
Oh, boy.
Right. But then people want to start chopping it up like Ignaczak. So then we Americanized it to Ignaczak. Which is more user-friendly. But then, in junior high and high school, everyone was calling each other by their last names. So, we're not going to walk down the hallway saying, "Hey, Ignaczak."
Right.
Let's go ahead and throw Iggy in there, and that's a wrap.
Yeah. Well, that's much more convenient. That's for sure. Yeah. Hey, super excited to talk about your story today. We, during our kind of pre-interview, had a just great conversation. Super excited, super interested to explore this more. Let's start with where we are today. Iggy, you are in the land of milk and honey. You are at Stanford University.
That is correct. I'm still pinching myself, on a weekly basis to make sure this isn't a dream.
Yeah, if you've never been to Stanford's campus, boy, let me tell you what, I've had the pleasure of being there a few times now. And it's there's never been bad weather. It's always awesome. What was you came from Eastern Michigan, so Ypsilanti, Michigan to Palo Alto. What was your biggest, the thing that just kind of you didn't expect to happen at Stanford or didn't expect it would be there? What was your initial reaction?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think the biggest takeaway, because again, the first time ever being on Stanford's campus was during my interview, and I think just the takeaway of this campus in particular is just how pristine everything is.
Yeah.
I remember just being golf carted around, and you see everything very well manicured. Just architecture. By design, trees planted in a specific manner, like everything, it almost seems as if it has a purpose or there's a reason for it. That's one of the biggest takeaways that I got, and I still get amazed because I'll still roam around campus and be like, wow, like all of this is postcard worthy.
Right. That's a good way to describe that. Yeah. Yeah. And you said you're still finding new things because you're in your first year there at Stanford University, and you're responsible for the jumps and pole vault and multis.
Correct. Yep. Jumps, multi, pole vault, both genders. And I got here. My first week was October 6th. So 2 weeks into the student athletes quarter, here I come storming on the track, getting things ready to rock and roll. And then, things changed a couple months after that.
Yeah, absolutely. For some for the good, you got to work with new athletes, and then of course season going to where it has been. So what did you say earlier? This was a good dry run for your first year.
Yeah, I think this is a really good dry run for all of us because everyone here at Stanford is on the track and field staff is brand new from top to bottom. So yeah, it's a good dry run for all of us.
And you've got some amazing members of your staff there, starting all the way from the top. Tell us who's all on staff there at Stanford now.
Head coach or director of cross country and track and field is JJ Clark.
Legend.
Yeah, I mean his whole family legacy in the sport of track and field is absolutely insane, and obviously his wife. So there's a lot of awesome conversations going on in the office and just sharing of stories and so forth. It's pretty awesome. So
now be real. Did you watch not Stand By Me? What's the movie? Is it Stand By Me?
It is Stand By Me.
Lean on Me.
Lean on Me. Lean on Me.
Lean on Me. Yeah, Stand By Me is the other one. Lean on Me. Did you watch Lean on Me before you went to interview?
I didn't. I mean, I've watched the movie multiple times. Did I watch it beforehand? No. And there's a reason for it. Because you know what? You're not the first person to ask me that. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not interviewing Principal Joe Clark. I'm interviewing his son, Joe Clark.
Good point. And I'm sure Coach Clark has heard it a million times about the movie. So yeah, that was probably good. Who's the other people on your staff there?
Ricardo Santos. He is the men's distance coach. He had spent a couple of years at Harvard. And then most recently, prior to Stanford, he was running the Boston Elites, track club or something along those names. Then we have Jarius Cooper, who has, had an extraordinarily awesome career at, Arkansas State, which is where him and I first actually met. Then he had an opportunity to go to UConn, which is where he first met Coach Clark. And then, things changed and now everybody is here. And then on the throw side, we have Jennifer Svoboda. I think I pronounced that name correctly. She was a pretty awesome thrower back in the day in the SEC. She's a Kentucky Wildcat, originally from Nebraska. And then you have myself, coaching the jumps, both horizontal, vertical, vault, and multis.
Outside of Coach Santos, I know everybody else, Coop and Jennifer and stuff, and Coach Clark. And boy, I tell you what, that is an all-star staff right there.
Yeah, when we all first got there, I was the last addition to the team, and we're all just like, all right, well, here we are. Let's figure it out.
If you guys can't get it done, man, come on. And before that, we mentioned you were in just as sunny and warm Ypsilanti, Michigan.
Oh yeah.
At Eastern Michigan with one of my favorite people. She's come up a few times because we've had a couple of her assistant coaches, and then we've had conversation about them. And I'm I'm a Sioux Parks alum as well. And how many years were you there at Eastern Michigan?
I was at Eastern for 2 years and like 1 or 2 months. I got there in August of 17 and then left in October of 19. So yeah.
And you were in a highly competitive conference. I think people outside sometimes don't look at the MAC and the results, but let me tell you what, that is a heck of a conference. What surprised you the most when you first got to your first conference meet there?
Shoot, what you just said. No, honestly, the MAC, I think it does have its recognition across the country, but a lot of people just don't necessarily talk about it. But no, the MAC is, especially on the field event side, oh my goodness. I mean, yes, it's a mid-major program or a mid-major conference, but the MAC is up there when it comes to NCAAs, whether it's indoor and outdoor. One thing that I found very interesting is how the MAC sets up their conference. So you're only allowed 3 entries per event, and that makes it a true team championship competition. And it gets pretty wild because, you don't have a program that's just flooding one particular event area, with points. You have to be more strategic on how you recruit, how you coach, and then obviously how you implement and execute that meet. And it is extremely high energy. It's pretty awesome. And that was my first experience actually being part of like a championship caliber type program. So
I'd forgotten about that 3 per event. Is that in? I know you have limited number of conferences you've been in. Is that one of the few conferences like that?
I don't know. I really don't know. I know that I've heard a lot of people talk about the MAC and how it is so competitive because of that rule. But I'm not 100% sure how many other conferences across the country, whether it's D1, 2, or 3 that actually do that.
What do you think about that idea of spreading and going to like NCAAs and stuff like that? That's a different way of looking at how you build your team.
Yeah, I don't know about NCAAs. I think it would piss a lot of people off.
Of course.
And I don't think we want those problems. It would definitely make things absolutely interesting. But I think that other conferences could also adopt something like that just to make it, an actual conference championship. Whereas some conferences don't really care for it. They're thinking about NCAAs. And I think at an NCAA standpoint, that would be very, very not okay.
Not okay. That's a good PC way of saying it. I like that. Well, certainly, as we talk about the strength of the MAC, I think if you look at the alumni of a conference or the alumni of a school, boy, there are a lot of coaches that have come through the Mid-American Conference in all events, distance, throws, jumps, sprints, you name it.
Yeah, no, I think, it's when I accepted the position at Eastern, my former athletic director at UCA, he had mentioned like, that's a great stepping stone to propel your career. And I'm like, okay, I mean, is it a stepping stone or is it just like, an actual position for me to continue to grow on my craft? And I think because that conference is very high level, across the board, that, it does expose a lot of coaches, for better or worse. And you kind of start to, get some recognition and get some conversations going and stuff like that. And I think that's why you do have a lot of coaches that are kind of out there that have started in the MAC or have at least made a stop at the MAC. And then, a place like Eastern, working under Coach Sue Parks, I mean, she's very stern, very, very tough and very, driven to get those points on the board. And, you definitely learn a lot on how to, structure and organize and implement to accomplish those needs.
I think everybody who has spoken about Sue has said the word tough, but immediately, I think we're batting 1,000 on this, immediately said the word driven to success. And, it's shown when you look at, I met her when I was her assistant at Ball State, how many team trophies and All-Americans and cross-country teams qualified for nationals, which is a hard thing to do. And then goes to Eastern, which wasn't having success at that time, and not slowly turns it around fairly quickly, if I remember right. I think year 4 maybe for her was the title hunt for the conference title, and again sending kids to nationals year in and year out, teams to nationals. It's she certainly may be tough, and I don't think she disagrees with that, but she is all about driven for success. And I think the people that work for her, and I believe I'm included in that, I at least like to think of myself as including that, you become better. Everybody has said they have gotten better being on her staff. So.
Yeah, no, 100%. And to that point of her getting to Eastern and then just kind of how quickly that program turned around. Whenever we have a conference championship, Sue loves to put these very detailed and thick packets that are essentially like itineraries, for the team. And I was kind of in charge of putting that together. And there was a document that listed every single, and I'm going to speak on indoor and outdoor, but that listed every single points outcome from the first year that she was there to where we are today. And like literally it has, which team was first, second, third, all the way to the bottom. And then the amount of points that they scored. and then we highlighted Eastern. I think her first year, I mean, we were DFL.
I think so. Yeah.
Then we went, about 3 spots up, and then another 1 or 2 spots up, and then we went 1, then back down to 4, and then it was just like 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, like pretty much through there on out.
I tell you, she knows how to win. Point blank. Period. End of statement. I tell you what, she's gotten it done, and it's cool. I have a place in my heart, a special place in my heart for alumni who work at their alma mater. So to me, it's just as much as she did at Ball State, which was amazing, for her to do it at her alma mater, to me is super special, and can't be more special for her as she works under the Bob Parks
exactly
track and field. Her dad, who's a legend.
Yeah, I think that's a story to be told on. On some platform one of these days, whenever that time comes. But I think, just that whole Bob Parks legacy, or the Parks legacy in track and field. And
love that guy to death, man. It's one of the highlights of my time with Sue is when Bob would visit, he'd be just a half a step over the door frame into my office and also be halfway into a story. It was so magical, man. I loved it. So it's maybe kind of easy, at least from the outside, to understand why you might have left in Eastern Michigan to go to a Stanford. That seems, I don't know how many people would maybe turn that down. I believe Sue, I think worked for at University of Arizona, not Stanford.
Arizona. She did interview at Stanford a handful of times, though.
Okay, maybe that's the connection. Yeah. So it's easy to kind of understand why you'd go from an Eastern to Stanford. What was the decision making? You'd been at University of Central Arkansas for a few years, I believe. Why was it time to go to an Eastern and not just stay at UCA or look for a different opportunity?
So I was at UCA for 3.5 years. I got there in January of 2014, right after the convention in December that month prior. And I mean, essentially UCA was my first legitimate, position as an assistant coach, not including, my St. Francis stint, which was a graduate assistantship. And I mean, I think that, that course, actually, let me backtrack. When I got to Central Arkansas, I told myself, and I told a couple of my buddies and peers and colleagues and mentors, I was like, because there was a period of time where I didn't necessarily have a job. And now I'm just, emailing people, I'm calling, whatever. I told myself, once I get to a job, which ended up being Central Arkansas, I told myself, I will never, ever call for a job ever again. I want to just do my part and, do my job extraordinarily well so that I can get a phone call with an opportunity as opposed to me seeking a position. And, there were some calls kind of along the way that happened while I was at UCA, but they just weren't right. And then, I think I wanted to be, I think it was time for me to experience new things. At Central Arkansas, I was able to, bring in top caliber kids and kind of perform on an individual level. But I haven't had experience performing on a team level. And contributing in that perspective. So once the opportunity to go to Eastern came about, I wanted to, trust me, I didn't sleep for multiple days. I had spreadsheets out with the pros and cons. I had phone calls with, I don't know, however many people just trying to, help me come to a decision. And, at the end of the day, I think it was just time to go ahead and gain new experiences. I mean, I even sat, like I told you earlier, in the athletic director's office and asked for his opinion. When I approached him, I was like, you're being an athletic director. What do you find more valuable, being that you actually hire coaches to be head coaches at some point? I was like, do you find it more valuable to have an assistant who has had success in a program that finishes middle of the pack, or a coach that has success but also wins, which has more weight? And then that kind of helped me navigate my decision. And yeah, that's kind of where we, how I ended up at Eastern.
And with Central Arkansas, maybe help us understand, for us that don't know Central Arkansas, tell us about what conference, Central Arkansas. Where is it located in Arkansas, and division, all that kind of stuff?
University of Central Arkansas, located in Conway, Arkansas, which is about no more than 30 miles north of Little Rock. So our main, hub for airport was Little Rock. One of the smallest airports. It was beautiful because you can leave within the hour, get on the plane, and be good.
Welcome to Champaign, Illinois. Let me tell you.
Yeah. So they are Division I Southland Conference, and
Southland.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was my true taste of Southern track and field, and that it was much different than that of the Northeast. We're running against Northwestern, and Stephen F. Austin, Sam Houston. They were all hitters in all their ways, and it's just like, okay, it's a little bit different down here, comparative to the Northeast, and where I was in my point, of my career growth. Like, this was definitely awesome. And even the Southland Conference is extremely competitive on the track. On a national side. Yes, it's still classified as a mid-major. And one thing that drove me was whenever I'm walking around, or if I'm at an airport wearing UCA stuff, people are like, "Oh, UCA, is that a Division II school?" No, we are a Division I school, and I'm going to make sure we put this thing on the map so you don't ever have to ask that question again. So those are the little things that kind of like, better recognize person.
That's right. You mentioned the Southland Conference. We're going to have, do you know Adam Pennington at Northwestern State?
Yeah, I know him.
Yeah. He's going to be on real
awesome.
soon on the podcast, and that Southland Conference is. I've got a lot of friends there with David Self at Sam Houston and some others. That is go look at the conference championships there, buddy. Tell me that's a lower level conference.
Right.
That thing is smoking, man. It's amazing. It's really, really amazing. So you alluded to, and this is a good segue to maybe jump back to the beginning of your adolescence and growing up, because you talked about that was kind of your first time in the South, being down in Arkansas. You are from the New Jersey area,
correct?
Right?
Jersey, born and raised. Obviously you have access to the tri-state area, which is New York City, Philly. You pretty much just have a lot. You can get to any part there within the hour. And I mean, if we're comparing that area compared to the South, it is extremely different. Not only from a population density standpoint, but more so from a demographic standpoint, and then just also mentality. I think that was the biggest transition that I had to deal with when I went down to Arkansas. Was being in Jersey, we're always thinking about how to hustle, how to grind, how to come up. And whenever I'm hanging out with my buddies, we're always talking about, hey, what are you doing to get better? What are you doing to support, your future family? What are you doing to, X, Y, and Z? Let's come up with we're always stimulating ourselves in that manner. Then I come to Arkansas, and I'm trying to have these same conversations, and people are like, I'm just kind of hanging out. I'm just chilling.
Drink your sweet tea and relax.
Yep, watch the birds fly on by, and I'm just like, actually, my first experience moving into Arkansas was like, I was trying to get the keys to my spot, and I'm just like snapping my finger. I gotta go. My knee is tapping. Like, I gotta go, and I'm like, I have nowhere to go because she has the key to the place that I need to go to. But she's like having this long, drawn out conversation about nothing. And I'm like, is this really what my life is about to be? And then at that point, that was one of those moments where I was like, you know what? I'm not in Jersey. I'm not in the tri-state area no more. Like, let's just go ahead, sit down, and let's see what this lifestyle is about. So I leaned back, and I'm just sitting there waiting for my keys.
You talked about Jersey. That was one of my recruited states throughout pretty much my whole career. Nice. And loved it because, first of all, I think there are some amazing, I know, just look at the results, some amazing high school track and field athletes come out of this fairly small state as compared to Florida and Texas and California and such. Terrible weather. at the time when I was recruiting, and maybe it's still the case, not a lot of indoor facilities. So a lot of kids training in the hallways and shoveling the lane one on their track to get some workout in. Just loved that mentality from those athletes that I was able to recruit up there. Just unbelievable. And definitely a different area. You know, you can't take a left anywhere, and you can't pump your own gas. That was the first things I learned very quickly there in Jersey.
I think you hit the nail on the head there, man. I mean, I remember, you know, we had hallway practices. We're hurdling in the hallway. We're jumping in the gym. We're doing everything that we can. And once we had this breezeway that was built, which now connected 3 hallways to make it one quadrant, if you will.
Ooh.
So, you know, there we had the skywalk, you know, relays, and, you know, where we can actually do multiple, like we can get more than 80 meters, you know, but you have to come to a damn near complete stop to make that left-hand turn. But, you know, you find a way. It's, and I think that's what makes that whole area a little bit different, man. You just find a way.
I tell you, I coached high school in Chicago at a Catholic League school there. And same thing. I think we had about 40 meters before the wall. And so you had the 90-degree turn exactly to the left, exactly as you described it, to get to another 40 meters. And it was just, you know, grind all day. What can you do to simulate the things that you would be doing if you had the ideal indoor facility or outdoor weather? It's just it's tough, man. It really makes you appreciate when you get to a real, you know, full indoor facility or have the weather to go outside. So you had mentioned when we talked before, you are a first generation. I think that's how you say it. Your mom came over from Poland.
Correct. Yeah. So I'm born. My brother. I have a brother 7 years apart, older. So him and I are first generation USA. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How was that growing up in maybe a different household than some of your peers were?
Very different. Well, for me, obviously it was normal, but as I'm young, you know, and growing up, I'm hanging out with whoever I'm hanging out with, and obviously their customs and norms are very different. And you know, I remember I wasn't allowed to do a lot. So whenever I had an opportunity to, I don't know, sneak out and do things, I did it. But, you know, my mother, she grew up in communist Poland. So, you know, her upbringing and just her mentality or just how she approached certain situations are very, very different. Everything is no, stay inside and just don't even deal with the external things. But, you know, I mean, at the time I was mad, like, how come I can't go out and play with my friends? And this and that. But then, you know, as I get older, it's like, well, I get it. Like, can I really get mad at somebody who was raised in a, you know, communist country that wasn't able to do much?
Yeah, I can't imagine growing up communist Poland. I mean, that just, there's no imagination I could even think of to how that would be growing up in the lifestyle that she had to endure there. So how did she, you mentioned communist Poland, how did she even get here to the States?
Well, that's another story in and of itself. So in Europe, a lot of people like to go and travel and explore the neighboring countries. And I have relatives in Germany. When I was younger, I would go over there fairly often to obviously spend time with family, but also just have the opportunity to explore that side of the world, even though I didn't really care much for it because I was at such a young and naive age.
Sure.
But so she was like a chaperone or a trip guide, if you will. And one of these trips that she had signed up for to work was going to Austria. And they went over the borders, and then you know, she made it a point to not get back on that bus to go back home to Poland.
Wow.
That was kind of her way of escaping. And yeah, she ended up, you know, getting, you know, put away in prison, and then it kind of turned into like a little bit of an Anne Frank story. You know, there are some people or organizations that would like bail these, I guess, what were they, refugees out? Yeah.
Refugees, I think, yeah.
And then they would ship them over to the United States, and then that's how my mother ended up at Greenpoint, Brooklyn, New York. However, you know, many months or years after that fact. So then, and then Greenpoint, Brooklyn it's a Polish community. And I mean, pretty much, when you go to New York, you have your different neighborhoods, and you'll have your Italian neighborhoods, your Polish neighborhoods, your Caribbean, Jamaican, whatever, and everybody speaks that language. So it's like, even though she was in the United States, she was able to still navigate everyday life because they're speaking her native tongue.
That sense of community is there.
So yeah, and then that's pretty much how my mother got over here. And then however many years go by, and then insert my brother, another 7 years, insert me. So yeah, we're 7 years, like I said, 7 years apart. And my brother actually, he spent more time in New York than I have. I was more so the Jersey guy from start to wherever I am now.
And mom's, you talked about where you are now, but and mom's American citizen now.
She was a green card for a while, and then she worked on her citizenship. I mean, honestly, she grinded a lot. I
was about to say, she sounds like a tough cookie, buddy.
Yeah, she's for those of you who have met her, some know, some don't know, but no, she's definitely tough. She like I said, just her upbringing, her lessons are here. We have Americanized her a little bit by now. So there's a little bit more of leniency on certain things, but no, I mean, honestly, she's one of the hardest working people I've ever met in my entire life. I mean, there's times where she would be working 80+ hour weeks. I'm in elementary school, getting a wake up call to the house landline. That was right next to my bed because that was my alarm clock because my mom's at work. And, she's saying, hey, your clothes are on the chair. You got a bagel with cream cheese in the microwave. Don't hit the microwave button. Just take it out and go to school. And then, call me when you're back, from school. And or sometimes she'll be home when I do come back from school, but she's asleep. And right. I mean, there's literally times where I did not see my mother for weeks on end because of, that time schedule. And like we'd be in the house at the same time, but there's times where I just did not see her because of that. And and this was me at age 6, 7, 8, 10, you know what I mean? Like,
wow.
Then as I get older, I kind of start realizing, I can go outside and play without having any curfew.
Man, I appreciate you telling us that story about her coming to America and growing up and how you grew up as a kid. Because I tell you that gives you a lot of perspective when you kind of mentioned it earlier about, when you started to complain about something or, woe was me. And it's like, I could just see your mom standing over you like, let me tell you about what was me. I was in prison for this. Right. I work 80 hours a week to make sure that bagel and cream cheese is there for you to eat and clothes and what have you. So, man, that's a really great perspective of what your mom went through.
One awesome. Thing that, I love conversation because everybody has a story. No matter who you are, like you can be somebody that was born with a silver spoon in the mouth or somebody that has been trying to, dig their way out, everything far in between. Everybody has a story. And if you can share that and if you can, or if the listeners can learn from it or get inspired from it, like what have you, share that story. You know what I mean? Like, I find storytelling to be extraordinarily valuable.
That's awesome. Yeah. Obviously, as we are here on the Gill Athletics Connections podcast, we believe in that. That's for sure. And every story has a chapter one. And chapter one for track and field, how does that start for you? When did you start getting into track? When did you stop breaking curfew and started running track?
I think those two overlapped. They definitely overlapped.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's actually really funny how I got into track and field. I did in 6th grade. I did I think it was called the elementary field day, and I wanted to run the 100 and the shot put. And the reason being is because the 100's a straight line, and then the shot put requires very little effort and anything.
No running.
So in 6th grade, I actually did the 100 meters and the shot put. I got a 4th place ribbon in the 100 and then I think I got a third or second place ribbon in the shot put, which was freaking mind boggling.
Nice.
Yeah. So that was my first actual taste to track and field. But then I go into junior high. So the school district that I went in, we did, 1 through 6 is elementary. And then junior high is 7 and 8. And then you go to high school, which is 9 through 12.
Right.
So now that I'm going into junior high, this is big league stuff, it's a different kind of world. And, but that's also where you kind of make yourself also. So, depending, with the people that I was hanging out with, we had to represent our little neighborhood. And then once you get into junior high, you actually start getting exposed to different pockets and different neighborhoods. So everyone's kind of on that same agenda, right? Like, who's the toughest guy out here? And one day I was walking the hallways to my class, and I got pushed. And I was like, yo, what the, what's going on here? And then this kid was like, what you going to do about it? I was like, what you want me to do about it? Like, and so he just starts talking. And then, before I notice, I kind of look through my peripherals. I'm like, all right, well, now we have a circle around us. So who's going to be the first one? I was like, well, I'm not going to be that guy. So swinging I go. Man. And, so yeah, we get a little scuffle. Nothing really, happens. But it gets broken up by this teacher named Thomas, Tom Rebold. And, he's like, hey, break it up. And he's shoving the hell out of me. So why don't you pick on somebody your own size? You're in 8th grade. What the hell's the matter with you? I'm like, sir, I'm in 7th grade. That's the punk that's in 8th grade trying to, check me. And then so he kind of just like yanks me over to he's like, fix yourself, go to class. But after the 8th period bell, you need to come to my room, which was like C something. I don't remember what it was exactly, but yeah. And you're in trouble. I'm over here like, holy crap. This is my first time in detention. I can't go home because I'm going to get in trouble in school. But if I don't, I'm going to get in trouble at home, which is worse. Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask you. Was your first thought like, oh, man, mom's going to kill me?
Oh, hell yeah. And I was like, my mom, it's about to be over with. Like, I'm literally not going to be alive tomorrow because of this. I'm like, how the hell am I going to explain this to my mom? Like, I'm over here just freaking out. I was like, you know what? Hell, I'm not going to lie to her. I'm going to tell her I got into a fight. I told to go to detention. It might have been the best decision for me because I'm staying out of trouble at home. So here I am, and come to find out, I wasn't even going to detention. I go into this empty room with Coach Rebold at the front desk, or at his desk in the front of the classroom. And he was like, in that filing cabinet, there's a bunch of shoes and some shorts. Find your size and meet me outside in 10 minutes. I was like, what?
He was the track coach.
Yeah, he was a cross country and track coach.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it was this was during cross country season because he gave me them short shorts, and I was like, I am not wearing these. I mean, these were the times where everything baggy was in, Right. And you out here need me to expose 3/4 of my thigh? Come on. But yeah, so that's kind of really how it all started. He introduced me to the hurdles, to high jump, and here I am. And I had to explain to my mom, I was like, hey, I'm not going to be home during these times because I'm actually going to be at practice, and I'm going to catch the late bus home. So my new time home is going to be around this. And she was like, the hell you are. Oh. You're telling, I was like, and I mean, there's times where like I told my mom, all right, I'll be home at this time. And I wasn't. I was actually at practice. Just because I knew that might have been the better decision for me, to be in this more structured area, in a safer area, as opposed to me just getting involved with some stupid nonsense, elsewhere.
So mom initially wasn't receptive to you joining the track team.
She didn't understand it. That's the thing. She honestly didn't understand organized sports. So again, I mean, at the time I blamed her, but now looking back, like I really couldn't blame her because she didn't understand organized sports and that these things were actually a thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I kind of, fought, my way into track in that particular, well, holy shit, no pun intended.
Yeah, that's right. I didn't catch that. So track becomes a part of you at this point. You're running you go through 7th grade and 8th grade. Now you're running on the high school team. Was Coach Revolt the high school coach too, or the different coach?
In my earlier years, yes. In my earlier years, yes. The junior high school and the high school were like maybe 600 meters away from each other. So we would literally run to the high school and practice when we were in junior high. We got exposed to the high school coaches, like the full-time high school coaches there. But yeah, so Coach Rebold was my high school coach for my freshman and sophomore year. And then he just focused solely on his junior high stuff. And then we actually got a new coach in, Robert Farrell, who's actually now the head coach of Rutgers.
Oh yeah, I was about to say I know that name. Yeah.
Yep. So
wow.
Yeah, he was my coach throughout my senior year, and yeah, it was a good role. I mean, shoot, my junior year was probably my highlight year for high school track and field.
What ended up being your top event in high school?
The 110 hurdles.
Oh, okay. Not shot put. You started out with such success in the shot put.
Yeah, not the shot put. I still did compete a little bit in the shot put. I mean, I've done multis throughout high school, and right. I would also just do these random meets, and I mean, I still competed in pretty much everything. I mean, shoot, in high school, they run you through the ringer and get them points, and
yeah. I say Jersey has a really strong culture of dual and tri meets.
Yes,
if I remember correctly. Yeah, right. So you kind of get a chance to do, well, first of all, you get a chance to do a lot of events, a lot of actual racing, but maybe you get a chance to do some off events as well because of that.
Yeah.
So what, so the 110s became your primary event? Is that the event you kind of maybe had the most passion for?
Absolutely. I love the 110s. High jump started to really grow on me also. So hurdles and high jump were my main thing. I mean, I've done the 400 hurdles also. And then people were like, hey, you can do a little bit of everything. Like, why don't you think about this decathlon? I'm like, what the hell is that? And they're like, well, it's one event, but it's really 10. And I'm like, wait, you want me to do more work?
I was going to say, when it's described like that, it describes like a fool's event. Like, why would I do that?
Right. But, and again, like, I'm so ignorant to all of this, and, Rebold, this is earlier on, is like, hey, like, you can make it to nationals in the pentathlon, because in high school they did the pent, and we had a really good crew of hurdlers. I was like, hey, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do the shuttle hurdle relays. And then we're going to go and have one or two of y'all do the pent, and you're going to be one of them. We actually ended up getting third at Nike Indoor Nationals.
Yeah. Wow.
In the shuttle hurdles. We should have gotten second. That was a tough. It was.
Oh, that sounds personal.
Yeah, it was, because it was a state school, Willingboro, New Jersey.
Oh, yeah.
It was us and them always battling it out. And here's what's messed up. So we were not in the seeded heat, but we ran a state record, a county record, all that stuff. And we're like, holy shit, we just locked in a really good time. And backstory, my coach, there's a video of him. We were getting destroyed in this non-seeded heat. I'm telling you, destroyed. And my coach, Coach Reba was like, will you freaking run? What the hell is the matter with you? Blah, blah, blah. Come to find out, that team from South Carolina set the national record. So we got second to the national setting record team that year. But now here you have the quote unquote seeded heat, right? With Willingboro and I forget who else it was. Well, the dude falls from Willingboro, and we're just like, holy shit, we just got second place. Like, we just got second place in the nation.
Right.
And then there were some protests that happened, and those two teams were able to rerun.
Yeah, I knew that was coming.
The one team didn't show, so Willingboro ran by themselves, and they beat us by .02.
Oh no!
Yeah, it was not okay.
Willingboro is that where Carl Lewis is from?
Yes.
Okay, I was gonna say I know Willingboro as a historic track and field program, and I thought maybe Carl and what's his sister's name? Denise? Carol Lewis. Grew up and just set a billion records growing up during the days. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that was personal, man. So
man. And were you paying attention to track on a collegiate or national scene? So did you have
I had no idea what college was. I knew that the Olympics happened. But I had no idea. I was in my everyday, you know what I mean? Take every day as it goes, because you never know what tomorrow might bring.
So you didn't even have you didn't grow up idolizing Carl Lewis or Ronaldo Nehemiah in your event, nothing like that. You didn't have any concept of who these
none,
gods
zero,
were.
none.
Yeah,
I could have bumped into one of them, and I would not have known. I'm just out here running. Then once you get a taste of winning, you want more of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I never really looked at the papers. We looked at papers, not the internet.
Yep.
And actually, it wasn't until Coach Rebold, he was like, "Hey, Iggy, you're ranked number 2 in the state." He's like, "Look at this paper," and I'm like, "What the hell is this?" That messed me up, I think, because I started paying attention to other people and
interesting.
And I low key, I mean, he didn't mean to do it, but
yeah.
And I'm just like, damn, because I was like, I need to see the paper. I need to see the paper. What are they talking about? They're talking about me in the papers.
Right.
So yeah, but no, I had no idea what college was. I'm still kind of being an adolescent. I'm still running around here doing this and that. My grades were okay. They weren't great.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, since joining the track team and having success in the track team, that all started from a fight. Did your attitude change, or are you still kind of maybe, I hate to say being a typical teenager, because not every teenager gets in trouble necessarily, but
right.
Were you still maybe putting your nose in places you weren't really supposed to at that time, or did you kind of straighten up?
It wasn't until my junior year, and honestly, that's when I think I told you before, that's when I had my best season. So my freshman and sophomore year, I was still kind of doing all the stupid stuff, hanging out with the wrong people, and just getting in and out of trouble, whether it was deep trouble or just slapping on the wrists. Either way, it was time that I shouldn't have been, things I shouldn't have been doing. So it wasn't until my junior year where I started to really refocus. And again, it was to Coach Rebold just saying hey man, it's your junior year. This is where you get to showcase your stuff for college. I'm like,
right.
What the hell are you talking about college? I'm not going to college. I can't, I'm dumb as hell. I've been told I can't go to college because I can't afford it. I don't even know what college is. And come to find out later, I have letters from, Georgetown, Florida State, Penn State, Yale. And I remember that Yale was a really smart school. So I jokingly responded back, "Hey, do you have a special ed program? Not to educate, but for me to be in."
Right. Oh, Iggy. Oh my God.
So yeah, it was different. And then, so Rebold, he was the one who was like, "Hey man, you're going to be getting some phone calls, from college coaches that are going to want to recruit you, and they're going to invite you on visits and this." And I'm like, how the hell am I supposed to go on these visits? I'm a 16, 17-year-old kid. I can't do this. I can't move to Florida. How am I supposed to? I can barely, Again, I had no idea what it was. And actually, he was the first one who took me on my first visit, which was up to Penn State.
Wow.
We drove all the way up there, met with the coaches, did the tours, all that stuff. And towards the end, I kind of was getting distracted because, again, I didn't recognize what it was. Then he took me on another visit, or actually had a coach come in to visit me in high school, in my high school guidance office. This is all throughout, my junior and senior year. And I was like, okay, now I'm starting to understand what this stuff is.
Okay.
And then the Mount, actually, I had about 3 teammates that were on my high school team. And actually, there's more in the surrounding town that went to Mount St. Mary's University.
Oh, okay.
And they were like, hey, you should check this school out. URI was going to be my number 1 choice, University of Rhode Island.
Great program.
But, Coach Rebold, he was just like, hey, URI is great and all, but you should really consider the Mount. It's a smaller atmosphere. You're going to have more individual attention in the classroom. That's really what you should be focusing on. So yeah, I go on my visit to the Mount during their finals week. Wasn't anything happening. That school is smaller than my high school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was there really wasn't anything happening, but the people were genuine. The everyone on that campus was extremely genuine, and I was like, you know what, I think this might be the spot. And I'm going to a place where I know people that can keep me in line and in check.
Right.
Where I can go to a URI or to a Penn State and get completely lost, and then who knows where I'm at.
Right. So you end up going to the Mount. That's where you chose to run collegiate track.
Yeah. I ended up going to the Mount. I got an academic scholarship, and then a partial athletic scholarship to make it a nice little package. And the first person I go run and tell to is Coach Rebold. I'm like, Coach, I think I've made my decision. I'm going to go to the Mount. And he was like, Iggy, I'm proud of you.
I was about to say, how proud was that guy? Come on.
Yeah. No, I mean, I still get, choked up, just talking about him and our experiences, because like he was the father figure that I didn't have.
Sure. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And he's like, I mean, he devoted so much of his time to me, and, he saw something in me that I didn't see, or even my own mother saw in me. Not to, put her under the bus, but because she was doing her own thing, like keeping a roof over our heads. But so it was very special to me. I was like, you know what, like this is where I'm going to go to school. And we shared our silences, like, oh my gosh, like, is this really real? Like freaking Iggy, the man that I broke up this fight from, like, and then he goes, actually, before you leave, he opens up his drawer in his desk, and he hands me a knife. Oh, and then
wait, is the Mount a pretty tough area? You need to have a knife with you, or why is Coach Rebold handing you a knife?
The Mount is not a tough area by any means. But no, and yeah, so he hands me this knife. He's like, "Hey, Iggy, does this look familiar?" And I'm like, "Are you freaking kidding me?" I was like, "I've been looking for that knife for years." What? And he goes like, "Do you remember that fight that I broke up?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "This fell out of your pocket."
It was your knife.
It was my knife.
Oh.
It was my knife. I don't know what the hell I was doing bringing a knife to school, but you never knew. Yeah.
So that's a bad thing. Having a weapon on campus in a fight. By the way, I mean, like, you were really close to maybe having a different path to a different career, and I don't mean career in a good way in this in this example.
Well, and he mentioned that. So he actually, as he was handing me that knife, one of the other teachers that was there that day during the fight comes in, and Mr. Lawson was his name, and he goes, "Mr. Lawson told me that I needed to turn that knife in." And then Coach Rebold said no, because he's just going to be another kid that goes into the system and we're going to lose him. I was like, just trust me on this one. Let me handle it. And then, Coach Lawson was like, "Oh, like, you're kind of going against ethics here, right? Like your actual jobs, and because you're supposed to report those kinds of things." Right. But again, Coach Rebold saw something in me, and you know what? Like, obviously, Coach Lawson later was like, "Iggy, like, you proved us all wrong, and we admire you for that, and we appreciate you." And I'm like, "Forget me. This is y'all." Like, y'all the ones who provided opened the door and provided this opportunity. So that was just like, holy crap. And the fact that he kept that knife in that desk for so many, or I mean, I guess 6 years.
Yeah.
It was just, I don't know. It was amazing.
What an amazing redemption story and second chance story. He easily could have, teaching high school and middle school, he had to seen kids get into a fight all the time, and bad kids who went on to do a lot of bad things. And he had a choice when he broke up that fight between you and the other individual, in the knife that fell out of your pocket. He had a choice of, here's another punk kid. Let me just turn him in and let other people deal with them. And instead, quite amazing, he took it the complete 180. Not only didn't say, let's just let someone else deal with them. Coach Rebold said, I want to deal with him, not put him in detention and get him in trouble, et cetera. You're going to come out for my cross-country team, young man. And then you had a decision to make. You could have said no, and then maybe you would have gone to detention. But,
exactly.
But it's interesting how he took on the risk of this kid, this admittedly punk kid.
Hey now.
and really grew something that ended up becoming maybe the first person to go to college in your family and things like that.
Yep.
That's amazing. Wow. That's something. When's the last time you've spoken with Coach Rebold?
Last week.
Oh, there you go. Good for you.
Yeah,
Good
no,
for
we keep
you.
in touch fairly often. I mean, earlier on in once like throughout college, I mean, we spoke pretty much every week or every 2 weeks, just catching up. Now it's kind of like every month or two because obviously I'm busy here and he's doing his retirement stuff, and
Right.
but no, we still keep in touch. We text, we send funny gifts and articles, and he was a math teacher and he loves math, and he was the one who told me that math rules the world. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He was like, no, literally everything. Like the desks that you're sitting at are mathematically, equated to be what they are. The buildings that you're in are mathematically equated. This and that, yada yada yada. So when we were talking about the COVID-19 stuff, he was like, oh, I follow the tracker, and he was like, I actually do math problems to see how close I can get to the actual number in the next day.
Wow, that sounds like a true math guy right there.
Yeah, it's funny.
That's amazing. I love that you are still in touch with him. I'm continually amazed at the power of a educator, and specifically that educator being a coach. And in our world, a track and field coach. What an impact! And I bet you, if with just a little bit of quote unquote investigative journalism, I bet you I could find hundreds of other people that this coach affected on a positive manner, such as yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, I could,
Wow.
yeah. And I mean, there was a very core group, that were surrounded around Rebold, and I mean, we all still keep in touch to this day.
Awesome.
One of them actually works at Exos, which is partnered with Altus over there in Arizona. Others are small business owners or restaurant owners, and like we all keep in touch. We all visit each other when we can, and it's just like, and you know what? It all resorts right back to good old Coach Rebold. Like,
Yeah,
it's amazing.
And we don't sometimes talk about this aspect, but the next layer of it. So while Coach Rebold had an amazing positive impact on you and hundreds, if not thousands, other high school kids, middle school and high school track athletes specifically, but even the influence that you have had in your career up to this point over young people, 18 to 22-year-olds, that's a reflection on him as well. He's affected layers and layers of people in under this umbrella of track and field.
Yeah, no, 100%. And then you know what? I'm going to take that one step further,
Okay,
or farther, I should say. Oh, was it further or farther? But
we're not English majors, so it's either one for us.
We're track coaches here, or yeah.
That's it, baby.
But no, and to kind of get started on my actual coaching career, it actually began at the Mount, at Mount St. Mary's. I actually went to the Mount wanting to be an education major and be a gym teacher, teach gym and be a lifeguard in the summer. That's what I was going to do.
That was the dream. Yeah, that sounds like a pretty good dream.
That's pretty much what everybody in Jersey was doing.
Okay.
And then I saw the schedule. I was like, you know what? I'm not doing that. But I do want to have an impact on people's lives. So let me go ahead and do criminal justice and sociology, and then be a reform officer, not necessarily a corrections officer, but a reform officer. So I I literally did all of my schooling in criminal justice and sociology. I actually had an internship with an at-risk juvenile detention center that actually sponsored sports and competed in high school to give them a second chance. And I'm like, that's the spot I want to go to. They closed down, and then I'm like, okay, well, now I don't have anything. What the hell am I going to do? So the track at the Mount was kind of in this bowl. So we would walk across this long field from the arc, and then you just stand pretty much right behind the 100-meter or 110 start line, overlooking the track. And, you'll see some athletes already at the start-finish line, 400-meter start line / finish line, because that's where we always congregated. People are there, and I'm looking at Coach Stevenson, Coach Phillips, who's actually the head coach of the Mount right now, Jim Deegan, they're just out there in gym shorts, laughing, having a good time. And I loved going to the track. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just literally stood at that hill, looked over the track. I'm like, this place is freaking beautiful. It's an oval. It's an oval. You know what I mean? But it's so perfect. And then I look over there, and like I told you, like, you know, I just see the coaches interacting with us, and I'm like, you know what? I think this is what I want to do.
That's a pretty good lifestyle. I could dig it.
I think this is what I want to do. Yeah. Like, I mean, I never, even in my hardest workout days, I knew that they were going to come. I still didn't dread going to the track. I dreaded the feeling of what I was about to endure, but I didn't dread going to the track. And then it was then where I was like, you know what? I think I want to be a track coach. So I literally sat there with Coach Phillips and Coach Stevenson, who are both still at the Mount.
Cool.
And I was like, how do I become a coach? And they're like, what's your major? I'm like, criminal justice. Like, well, it's too late to change that.
Depending on where you coach, that might be the right major for you.
True. So. True. But yeah, that's kind of where that like initial idea was sparked in the head.
And so you got a criminal justice undergrad, and you mentioned you did your grad work at St. Francis. What did you get your master's in?
Education and leadership. So it was a combination of education, HR, and business. It was a trio. So pretty much what that set you up for was like I can be a principal or an administrator in a school, or being that I have an athletic background, you know, like an athletic director at a high school or whatever. That was kind of that, you know, essentially what I wanted to do was open the door back open for me regarding around athletics.
Right. Right. Something involved in that part of the world, the athletic world. Yeah. Iggy, you know, you have come on today to the podcast, and you've really step back and say, really appreciative of how humble and authentic. You know, it's not easy to sometimes talk about the not so great things and the hardships that we've endured. We all like to kind of picture ourselves on that proverbial Stanford track with the palm trees around us, and you know it's a cold 70 degrees today. You know, it's perfect, right? So it's really, you know, it's hard to talk about those struggles and upbringings. So first, again, just so appreciative that you would take the time and share that story. Absolutely. But, you know, sharing that story, obviously your passion and drive comes through. Why was it so maybe important for you to talk to us today about that story and that upbringing?
And again, it goes back to what I said earlier, is that everybody has a story, right? And everybody is always looking up, right? We're always looking at what the top athletes are doing, or what the top coaches are doing, or what the top CEOs are doing. But in reality, we are all regular people that breathe the same air, and that's it. You know what I mean? We go to sleep, we wake up, we grind, or how we choose to grind is up to anybody that chooses to. So, you know, and like I remember myself being a young guy, like, all right, here I am. I want to now be a track coach, and I'm graduating college, and I have no job. I have nothing. This collegiate bubble bursts. And I'm doing nothing college coaching related. I mean, I was actually working for Smart Cart, which is a global company, and they had a station at Six Flags Great Adventure. And I was, you know, I ended up working as a supervisor and tech informant, if you will, like for lockers. I literally rented lockers while I was trying to get into this coaching world. I mean, I can show you notebooks that I have still with every single, I listed I think I reached out to 7 conferences, went onto the website, got everybody's email address that was affiliated with a track and field, you know, team. And I sent in my resume. Hey, here I am. I'm trying to find a job. I mean, there's times like walking around Six Flags Great Adventure every day, there's a lot of change, and we have pickers. I'm picking up change. And that literally funded my first level 1, USATF level 1 coaching course, which was held at Monmouth University.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, that was literally like I used the change from Six Flags while at work to fund for that. And then that got me more exposed to different coaches. And then, you know, just getting conversations started. And then St. Francis gave me an opportunity. I went on and did that. That's when I actually learned about the convention, the USTF-CCCA convention. I had no idea what it was. So I'm like, hey, I want to go. And, the coach was like, well, you're a graduate assistant. You don't get to go. We can't pay for you. And I'm like, well, I want to go. So I literally applied for a Spirit Airlines credit card, knowing that Spirit Airlines is really cheap. And I literally took out a card and I paid for myself to get down there. But I don't have a place to stay. I'm kind of jumping around from room to room, again, just navigating the convention as a young kid, fresh out of, I guess a year out of college, just trying to get a job. And I'm just trying to get my name out there. Then my second year at St. Francis, now it's like, shoot, my graduate assistantship's about to be over. I need a job.
Oh, yeah.
So again, same mentality goes. I'm going to the convention. Now I figured out better ways to get there. But I remember going to the IC4A ECAC championships at Princeton University, and they had a coaches meeting. I had no business going to that coaches meeting, but I went. So at the end, I can say, hey guys, I'm Iggy. I'm going to be finishing up my graduate assistantship here at the end of this month. I'm going to be looking for a job. I have resumes in my book bag if you want one or know somebody that could use one. Again, it's just, keep grinding, find a way. I mean, I can't tell you how many no's I've gotten. The amount of no's that I've gotten to the number of yeses is, far more in favor of the no. But that doesn't mean that we should be discouraged and get going. Again, if you want something for yourself or want to be a part of or want to contribute in whatever way possible, then go ahead and find a way. And, and that's why people are like, oh, that's why you're at Stanford. I don't know. Maybe it's by luck. I didn't call for Stanford. You know what I mean? I got the phone call for here, and that's like I told you all before. When I got to UCA, I did not want to apply for another job unless it was provided or presented to me. And, is this the pinnacle of it? I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. I mean, I'd like to be a head coach at some day. I'd like to, mentor, continue to mentor young adults and or coaches. And, that's just who I am. That's who Iggy is.
So speaking of those young coaches, I truly believe there's going to be someone in a similar situation to what you described of literally picking quarters and change off the ground to fund their dream. Your dream was to coach college, and you scraped it up to and saw the foresight of how education would bring that to you, by the way, not just your college education, but going through USATF level 1 and USTFCA's CCA's conventions. So someone is going to be listening right now that is in a similar desperate, if you will, situation. What would you say to that young man or young woman who has this dream of coaching collegiate track, but is just literally scraping dimes and nickels off the ground?
Know that you're not alone. And find yourself a good mentor. But don't do it in the manner of I'm looking for a mentor. Let me see who wants to be that person. For me, it was Gustin Schmader, who's now the head coach at Indiana University East, IU East. Him and I were at St. Francis together, and he taught me a lot. He watched me fail on purpose, so I learned from it, and so I would just say, find yourself a good mentor that is going to challenge you, not give you the answers, because you got to figure some of that stuff out for yourself. They can point you in the direction, but you ultimately have to figure it out. That's why, whenever we're talking about training stuff, it's not about, let me see what workouts you're doing and then implement them, but why are you doing those? And that's the same exact thing when you're pursuing your passion and your career path. Why are you trying to get into this position? What does it mean to you? Honestly, knock on every door. I mean, hell, I've literally called random ass coaches that didn't have a position open saying, hey, I'm Coach Iggy. Here's what I've done. I'd like to interview sometime, without a freaking position. And then they're like, yo, who is this crazy kid? You know what I mean? But if they start hearing, all right, hey, this Iggy guy is freaking grinding. What do you think that's going to look like when, like, I mean, to me, if somebody keeps calling me, or if I keep hearing the same name over and over, like, damn, that guy or girl can probably recruit their ass off because they're just not stopping. You know what I mean? Like
that relentlessness.
Yeah. So I guess the message kind of drawn out there, my apologies, but is just don't give up. If it really means that much to you, do not give up. Everybody has a story. You're continuing to write yours, and let life be a part of it, and let us be a part of it. Some people will reach out to me, and I'll give them the hard truth. And I mean, people still do. Like former athletes at UCA, hey, I want to get into coaching. What do you got for me? I got nothing for you, but what are you doing about it? And that's my response. And they want the answers, but that is literally the answer. You know what I mean?
That is an extremely important message. I really appreciate you expressing that. And from listening to your story today, I would add search for the no. I thought you really hit the nail on the head there, Iggy, about you've heard way more no's than yeses, but and I'm paraphrasing here, but you had to wade through those no's to get to the yes. So, I think that coupled with your message there, that story of relentlessness and really self-worth and value of, you deserve it, go out and ask for it. Yes, you're going to hear no's, but you're not going to get the yes if you don't ask the question. Right. So I tell you what, that is going to positively affect someone that you may never ever know about, Iggy, but it's part of your story that you expressed there. I love that.
And to add on, not to cut you off, but to add on to that about the majority, you're going to hear more no's than you will yeses, but then not every yes is also the right yes. Because, I mean, there's times throughout these, oh my gosh, I don't have a job, that I was offered positions that just weren't right for me. And I had people like, yo, you're crazy. You don't have a job and you're turning this one down. But if you truly believe in something, that there's something bigger and better out there, then you got to, then that's what that is. Not every yes is the right yes. And you have to know what that is for you. Because, I mean, trust me, it was hard for me to turn down positions that when I didn't have a job.
Yeah.
And then, sure enough, I kind of had an offer before going down to the convention in 2013. And then but I didn't sign anything. So I still pursued that convention as if I didn't have a job. And then it landed me to Central Arkansas. It was a better position financially. It was a better position locally. It was a better position career-wise. There it is. Like,
man, that is, you talk about a truth bomb. You've said a lot of good things. What a way to end today's podcast with, wading through the nose to get the yes, but not every yes is the right one for you, depending on your time and circumstances. Boy, I tell you what, that is if you made it this far in the podcast, you just got you got so much value right there, man. Oh, Iggy, so awesome, man. God, I knew this was going to be great.
It took an hour and 20 minutes to get to it, or whatever.
Hey, if you've taught us anything today, it's about perseverance. So getting through an hour plus podcast, if that's all we've got to do to have the truth bomb on us, man, that's of little concern of ours. And let me tell you what, we definitely learned your mom would laugh at us that this was our hardest thing to get
she's
through.
Going to be pissed off. I might share this with her and she's going to be pissed off, and then I'm going to hear it either way. So,
Well, let me speak directly to Mom. You should be unbelievably proud of your son. Having known Iggy now for a couple years, and certainly people who are going to listen to this podcast have known Iggy for a lot longer. Certainly Coach Rebolt and that gang up there. Boy, Mom, whatever you were doing, you certainly were doing the right thing. So you should be extremely proud. And you can definitely tell in Iggy's voice of how proud he is of you, Mom. So Iggy, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm sure you've got sun and fun in Palo Alto to get to. Be careful with all those bike riders. That's my biggest memory of Stanford. So many freaking kids left and right riding their bikes. But definitely, continue doing what you're doing. I think you have a long career ahead of you, not just coaching track and field, because on the long list of positive things that we do as track coaches, actually coaching is maybe near the bottom. Affecting young people's lives in positive manners on and off the track are some of the most important things that you do as a coach. And you certainly have the gifting to affect kids' lives in a positive manner.
Man, I appreciate that. This was an awesome experience. And, like I said, if we can share a story to help motivate and inspire anybody, then let's go ahead and do it. What's in front of you is not your future. So let's continue to work towards our future. And man, I really appreciate this, and I'm sure we'll be keeping in touch, off the podcast about various things. So
always, and go do what you were doing before I called today. Go get prepared for 2021.
That's it, man. That's it. Go Cardinal.
All right, Iggy. That's it, baby. Go. Yeah,
exactly.
No S. Go Cardinal.
Thank you.
Have
Appreciate
a great day,
you,
my man. See you, brother. Well, that was a ton of fun. I feel like we could have written a motivational book there near the end with this real pertinent information. And I do truly believe that someone will be listening today that needs to hear that encouragement from someone such as Iggy. And you can just tell again from just his tone and passion. This guy is affecting kids in the collegiate level in so many positive ways. I certainly would love if my kid was coached by an Iggy, that's for sure. Hey, if you've made it this far, thanks for joining us today. Really hope you enjoyed connecting with Iggy as much as I did. To learn about future episodes here on the Gill Athletics Connections podcast, you're going to want to hit the subscribe button on your podcast player of choice. That way you'll be notified when we drop future episodes here for the podcast. And of course, we can't do this podcast without you. So if you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the Gill Athletics Connections podcast, contact me at hurdle@gillathletics.com. That's right, hurdle@gillathletics.com. In the meantime, hope you feel led to share this podcast on your social media network of choice, and join us next time when we once again connect you with another great track and field coach.